It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 433. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
I'm feeling full of beans.
Ashgar.
Hi.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
I'll eat my candy with the pork and beans.
Damn.
What?
I've been playing a lot of Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. It's a thing.
Okay. What is Xenoblade Future Redeemed? Is it the mobile game?
Is it the DLC?
It's the DLC, yeah.
Okay.
If you play as the character Matthew, you will hear him exclaim that he is full of beans very often while you're attacking with him for reasons, I guess.
I saw, like, one of my favorite copy pastas applied to the little cute Xenoblade things that do not sound anything like I imagine they should. But it's the mushroom, you cannot kill me in any way that I would care about.
Just a flag that's no pod.
Yes.
Amazing.
So last week we didn't talk about Honkai Star Rail, even though it came out, I think, last week, because Ammo couldn't make it to the show, and Ammo has been playing, and I have played a very small amount of the game.
Same.
Yes.
It's a cool game from what I've seen of it.
Yeah. I had played in one of the betas, so I already knew I was going to like it, and I'm very glad that the full release is here because they've polished it up even a little bit more. It's been a lot of fun. I really like the aesthetic. I like kind of the cool sci-fi environment going on. It is by the people who made Genshin Impact, but it's, I would say, a lot more polished and nicer than Genshin Impact.
That's saying something, because Genshin Impact was pretty polished.
I almost get like Persona vibes from it.
A bit. I mean, I think the combat is what people really comment on that a lot. But like, the writing is pretty snappy. There's some pretty decent humor in odd places if you poke in trash cans and closets and so forth.
So is it any nicer on your wallet than Genshin Impact?
I mean, I think the gacha rates are mostly the same, but they've also been pretty generous with the stuff right out of the gate because they did a ton of pre-registrations on it. So I don't really, even when I was playing the beta, I still got like 3 or 4 5 stars just by playing the game naturally and spending the currency that I got by playing. And like so far I've gotten 2 in the main release. Plus, like, the free characters that you get, the 4 stars, are really good right out of the gate.
Nice.
So,
I mean,
That's
it's a
reassuring.
wildly different kind of game, though, than Genshin Impact. Like, it's a
true.
It's a JRPG, essentially.
That is very true.
Full turn-based.
I mean, it's got some cool mechanics, too. You know, like the way the different abilities target things and...
Yeah, you can build some really neat team synergy with the different characters, and there's a lot of room to kind of experiment with people who can increase the speed of your party or like buff your party or debuff enemies and so on and so forth. And there's a mechanic, if you hit the enemy with a weakness attack as you're going into combat, that can have a varying effect on how the battle will start. If like some of the enemies might get frozen or imprisoned right off the start, so you get a very quick edge up in battle.
Is it like a tactics game, or is it just like old style Final Fantasy VI? I have 4 guys on my side, they have X number of people on their side.
FF6.
Yeah.
It's not like, there's no positional element.
There's no positional element.
Yeah.
I mean, combat feels more like a, Final Fantasy 13 era game than a 6 era game, but
yeah, Like speed is a big thing in this game. Like if your character has higher speed, they can get their actions out faster. And you might even be able to get like a possible rare double attack sometimes before an enemy can move, and so on and so forth. So it's got different strategies for sure.
But it sounds like it's probably more focused on like the characters you have and the how you grow their stats.
And like ability synergies. Like you really want characters that are setting up other characters and building. I mean, you're trying to wombo combo people.
Yes, exactly. And again, with the various characters, you can either just like build like a tremendous damage team to just basically try to blow the enemy up as fast as possible, or ones that are super defensive to try to outlast the enemy. And so it kind of, there are certain fights where you want to mix things up a little bit, but for the most part, I think my favorite thing so far is trying out some of the different characters and just seeing how they work together, because you can get some kind of interesting results.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like build craft opportunity.
Yes. And again, there's like a decent amount of 4-star characters, and like I've already gotten quite a few of them just with like the free gacha and stuff like that. So again, like you can get some kind of fun tools to play with pretty early on, and you don't feel like you're stuck with just like the standard team like for very long. And even then, like I said, the free characters you do get through the story are really good.
Yeah, like it feels like they've learned some lessons from Genshin Impact where
Yes.
Because, like, there were some of the free characters that were kind of awful. Like, they were fun for a while, but they really didn't do great job of actually, like, filling a niche in Genshin Impact. I'm looking at you, Amber.
You realize that this character was bad.
Yep.
And you were like, oh, man, that character was cool.
Yep.
That was actually a thing that got me with Genshin Impact. I was sort of getting the same thing here, where I'm like, these characters are cool, but they don't mean anything. Like I don't actually know, like they don't have any stories or anything, so it's hard to get attached to them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's something in Genshin that they added a little bit later on, but I feel like with Star Rail, again, there's like not a ton of characters, and the characters you get are the actual like adventuring party that you're, doing the adventuring with. So it feels nice to have them in your party. And then in the story, it feels really nice that way. It flows really well. And again, you can still mix it up, but it's having them there the whole time makes them feel a lot more important, and you do learn a little bit about them as the story goes along.
But like, it sounds like frequently your party that you are fighting with is not those characters, and the party you're fighting with doesn't necessarily have a story attached to them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So far, the characters that have been released are ones that are either in the main story so far, or kind of like side characters, like they're referenced, but they haven't really been active in the story. Some have been very active, but I mean, I feel like there's a little more connecting them to the story than some of the Genshin characters felt at first.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit to get there with some of the characters where the characters are foreshadowing.
Right.
Well, and it was kind of all over the place with Genshin Impact, because there was a lot of characters that we knew a lot about and then suddenly got access to them. But then there's others that like never really seem to get their due.
Yeah, and I have to say for Genshin, I think they are doing better with having various characters more important with like some of their story events that they do periodically, but it's still, if you miss that event, you're going to miss out on anything that had to do with that character. So that kind of sucks. But with Star Rail, like the characters are there and do interact with the story, and that's not going to go away. So you can still, get those little bits with them and stuff. But I just think they've done a better job of tying the characters that you can get in your party, like the various gacha characters. They're a little more tied with the story. So like when you pull like a character, you're like, oh, hey, I got that guy. That's cool. I want to try him out in battle and see how he is.
I'd be curious to find out if they've solved one of the key problems that I had with Genshin Impact is after a while, I felt very locked into my party because the cost either in time or in actual cost to catch up another
Yeah.
party was too great. So I'm kind of stuck on this path forever now.
I have not felt like it's that bad. I haven't like built every character that I've picked up so far, but I have been able to be like, okay, I need to build a lightning character now, so I'm going to invest into this character for a bit. And so far for like there's like the tutorial station, and then there's the first world. And like for the first world, it's like I had kind of like the main party that you get, and like maybe one or two other side characters I was building, and I didn't really feel too strapped for resources, at least not yet. And in beta, I had probably about 8 or so characters built with the first world and like what they had done of the second world, and I didn't really have too much of a struggle, and I don't feel like it's as bad getting stuff to level people. I mean, there's still like the relic grind, which is kind of like Genshin's artifact grind, but I hadn't really felt the pressure of getting super really good, perfect relics yet. So that I felt like forced to grind before I could do anything good with my characters.
Yeah, I definitely want to spend some more time with it. I just haven't had a chance yet, other than, the first couple days I played it. So a Horizon Forbidden West expansion came out.
It sure did. We get to go to the Burning Shores, aka LA. And I guess this also came out before the show last week, but I wasn't here to talk about it. But I am now. And I've spent quite a few hours with it. I have not gotten super far into the story, but I've done a few of the story quests and at least one or two of the side quests. And it's more Horizon, so I'm always going to love that. I think it suffers a little bit from the same thing that Horizon Forbidden West suffers from in general, which is the story of the first game was really cool and it was a cool mystery, and that's missing a little bit from Forbidden West, and it's missing a little bit here. There's a big bad you're trying to track down, and you meet some new friends along the way, and that's cool. But the story is just not catching me. Now, the characters absolutely are fantastic. And I have enjoyed the side quest characters. I've enjoyed the main character that's new. Obviously, like the character writing all of these games is amazing. So that's really fun. And it's also, I feel like it's a little bit like the expansion to the first game in that it's definitely a bit of a step in difficulty from the main game, largely because packs are full of, the machines that you can't override, and everything is apex. Not always, but it's just frequently, which makes it tougher. Packs feel a little dense sometimes. So it took some getting used to, especially after having not played for quite a while before I picked up this expansion. It took a little bit to brush off the cobwebs, but it also it does pretty quickly hand you a bunch of new weapons and armor that you can get from the vendor in the very first town. And it's pretty straightforward to find the currency to buy those, and it's been pretty quick to get them upgraded, and they're significantly better for the most part than the equivalents from the original game. So all of that has definitely helped. But I mean, overall, I'm enjoying it, and I couldn't imagine not enjoying having more Horizon to play. We'll see where this story goes exactly and how I feel about it once we get to the end of it. But in the meantime, I mean, probably the reason why I haven't finished the story is because, as always, it's just too much fun to go wandering off and explore and murder machines. And I will say that some of the various map excursions that exist in this expansion are pretty fun. I don't necessarily want to spoil what they are, but there's just, the vistas and cauldrons and all of the different things. There's just a couple new kinds, and I have enjoyed them. I think
Have you been to the Hollywood sign?
I have. I have, and it's funny because you look at it and are like, isn't this supposed to be, how many years after? Like, why is the Hollywood sign still there? And in fact, when you go up to the Hollywood sign, there's a data point that talks about the person whose job it was to coat the Hollywood sign with nanites so that it would be self-repairing indefinitely. So there you go.
Nice touch.
Which is so on brand for everything you hear about the before times.
Mm-hmm. No, it was perfect. I really enjoyed that. And there's just, it's the little touches, the collectibles are funny and charming, and, have, you have to do a little bit of extra exploration sometimes to get to things, which I enjoy. And I did complete, I think it might be the only cauldron, I'm not sure, but I definitely completed a cauldron, and that was fun. Oh, they're always fun. I like them. I've really enjoyed how all of the cauldrons in Forbidden West have been very different from each other, and this one was also very different. So I liked that.
I would imagine it's a little bit surreal roaming around that area because, like, even if you've never been to California, you know the landmarks because of media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but it also makes it fun. And it's nice, there's some tall buildings and some tall, high up landmarks and hills and things, and getting to fly around to stuff makes that extra fun. But yeah, I'll report back in once I actually get through the story, but I hate saying, "Oh, no, none of this is as good as the first game," but I love the first game so much.
The first game was very good.
And in all fairness, the mechanics and the combat and everything in this game is superior in pretty much every way to the first game. It's just that the story and the exploration of the first game were so incredible.
It was amazing.
And so new.
It is interesting because it's kind of a high praise for that game that the story was so good it's kind of hard to follow up, because usually the second games are the ones that everyone remembers as fondly. Usually it takes two games for a studio the second game for a studio to really figure out what they're trying to do.
Right. I mean, you can go so far back as like Mega Man series. Mega Man 2.
Absolutely.
Just infinitely better than the first game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zero Dawn just knocked so much out of the park. But I do think that the game mechanics themselves are definitely more polished here, and just the character writing has only improved. So that is excellent.
Yeah, they just told such a singular story in their
Yeah,
first game.
it was just hard to follow that up.
Yeah.
And I keep hoping that they'll
it's so hard to
announce.
figure out what you do after that.
I keep hoping they'll announce the PC release because I mean that's really what I want to play this on.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that I could play this on PC. But I've been doing significantly better on PS5 with this expansion than I did when I tried to play the expansion to the first game with a controller. So it's, yeah. I don't know if I'm getting better, or if it's just that this game has enough more polish that it makes it a little bit easier for me.
Well, I mean, I think the PS5 controller is a better controller than the PS4 controller was.
Well,
but
that
also,
helps too.
like the aiming felt like it worked better on Forbidden West.
Yeah. And while I do think that this expansion is a step up from the base game, I don't think it's quite as hard of a step as the Frozen Wilds expansion was. Where that one, there were some fights where I just decided I'm going to just turn the difficulty all the way down because I don't care and I just want to see the story.
Well, and even like the roaming wildlife of like those awful polar bears or fire claws or whatever they were.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't love the main new machine type that's added. It's not super fun. I like the design of it. I like the look of it. I like what they're doing, but I don't like fighting them.
They're not fun to fight.
They're just, I mean, for me and the way that I approach combat in these games, it's not great. For some people, it might be just fine, but they're definitely doing something interesting, and I do like the design. But yeah, definitely would still recommend this. Would recommend the base game. Obviously, if people haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn, you need to do that.
You should probably stop listening to the show right now and go get it. What is This Means Warp?
So, I've talked about in the past. I've talked about how I'll hit my Steam queue and just go through it until I hit like the 6th or 7th round and start getting into like the really weird stuff. And so I was doing that a couple of days ago. And Ash was also and pointed me at this game. This Means Warp, because we're looking at co-op games. It is co-op FTL, basically.
That can either be amazing or extremely frustrating.
It's so.
I mean,
found it. It's
you've
actually
seen Cook Serve Delicious. It can't be both at the same time.
Yeah,
that's fair. It was really like I played it for a few hours just solo, and it was pretty satisfying. It's got a bunch of creative. It takes what FTL was doing, and like adds a bunch of interesting like extra little mini games and extra little bits of functionality and so forth that I feel like it'd be a really fun co-op experience. Just because it's hitting that like, hey, you and your friends are all making a ship go, and fighting in concert and fixing things and going on spacewalks to get whatever it is you need and so on and so forth. I haven't really like delved super deep into it, but it also feels a lot less hope you roll well than FTL did. Like FTL, one of my issues with FTL is that the ship you start out with is bad. Every other ship you unlock except one is also mostly bad. If you get the one ship, you can win really well because there's like one strategy that's very effective and basically nothing else really is. And so it's neat to see a game where they clearly realize that, and there's a variety of different ways you can approach things. For example, I got a gun that hits very hard on hull. So my strategy is to watch for when one of the like opposing ship's crew is near a wall and then blow up that wall and suck them out into space. Because they're not dead, they respawn, but it's enough of a delay that it lets me get in more damage elsewhere and buys me a bunch of time. And like that's a perfectly it's that strategy got me pretty far. So it's kind of neat seeing like, hey, it's definitely FTL, but it's building on the concept. Plus it was like $14, so
I am curious to see, like, because my next question is, this sounds kind of Space Alert-ish. How does it scale up with more players? Is it still same difficulty and you just have more people able to do things at once, or does it actually scale in difficulty?
I don't know how it scales, because I haven't had the opportunity to try it.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that purely solo, it feels very skin of your teeth because you can't do as many things as you'd like to at once. And I think with 2 to 3 people, it would be like at least the ship that I started at would be the sweet spot. I think a 4th person would be like, I'm not super clear what I'm doing.
Mm.
But there's some stuff that I just didn't explore because I didn't have the bandwidth. Like you might actually be able to board enemy ships, like spacewalk over to enemy ships and board them. I haven't tried it, but you might be able to. And also just being able to be on top of
various things going on.
Yeah, because if you want to fire a gun, you have to load ammo into it, which means you've got to have ammo run from the ammo vendor basically over to one of the guns, and then you've got to get in the gun and then you've got to shoot it. And if you've got 2 people, you've got your 2 gunners who are shooting, running, getting ammo, putting it in the gun, and firing it again. And then they have to stop shooting to repair. And repair can get pretty hairy. So I could see like a particularly nasty fight. You've got 2 people repairing and 2 people continuing to shoot. Yeah. But like I didn't need that every fight.
But it can still be something to do.
Yeah, and it does escalate in complexity. I and this may have been I got relatively lucky, but I was able to get a hold of some like auto loader bots that just like auto load ammo and automatically dispose of bombs if people teleport onto your ship and so forth. But those are all opportunity cost things because you only have a certain amount of points on the ship you can put stuff. So it's entirely possible that I could put another gun maybe on the ship and it would make more sense. Or you could get a really handy bucket chain going where you've got 2 people rapid firing a gun, where one is loading and firing while the other one is going to get more ammo, and then they just swap. But it definitely looked fun. There's definitely, it was fun playing with just me and an AI, and there were a number of times where I was like, man, I wish this AI were a human person, because a human person would be a lot better at this than an AI. But yeah, if you liked FTL or liked the concept of FTL, if not the execution, it's probably worth your time. It's got, I think FTL's sense of humor is a little sharper. This one's a little like, it doesn't grate on me, but there's times where it's making jokes and I'm like, yes, I see you made a joke. Thank you. It's not taking itself overly seriously. It's got a little bit of the whoops, you clicked the wrong thing, which is never like devastating, but it can be mildly annoying.
So Vampire Survivors has a DLC now?
Yeah, it's $2.
What do it do?
I haven't the faintest idea.
I know it adds some characters, and I think it adds some weapons, but I still have no actual idea myself either.
Yeah. It might add a level, maybe? Unclear. I gave them $2 because I've gotten so much more time out of Vampire Survivors than I feel like I paid for.
Vampire Survivors is a really good Steam Deck game.
Yes, it is a very good Steam Deck game. It is a very good I'm trying to go to sleep game. Granted, I wake up sometimes and it's like, you died. I'm like, oh yeah, what a surprise. But yeah, that was purely, I didn't know this was out, but turns out it is.
I mean, I feel like Vampire Survivors should cost a lot more for what it is.
It certainly feels like I've
gotten more than my money's worth out of it.
Yeah.
I will say I've gotten to the point where all of the stuff I need to do in it requires a guide, which is not really compatible with the way I play that game.
Maybe the DLC adds more stuff for you to do without a guide.
I mean, it did add a level that I hadn't played, which might be the new level. And I did unlock a new character with a weapon that I do not fully understand at all. But it is fun. I need to kill the stupid Katamari, which I've thus far not been successful at.
Okay, Kodra, you have to explain this one. If everyone but the tank is dead, it's still a win.
So Ash and I have been playing some Middara,
Okay.
and we played the first bounty. And so this is my pitch. If you're playing Middara and you're on the first bounty, and it's the first opportunity you have to play that bounty, maybe just wait till the next opportunity you have to play that bounty. It's very hard. It's also very long. The bounty is like a bunch of different steps long, and if you lose, you basically have to restart from the beginning.
It has the weird thing where it appears to be designed for the second loot level. But throws in monsters clearly not designed for that loot level. It's intended to be extremely difficult.
Yes. It's designed, it's actually, the monsters are designed for the third loot level.
Yes, but the actual bounty itself says it's for uncommon.
Yes. So that's a fun thing. Anyways, we managed to get to the final fight, and let's just say very quickly every single one of us died except for our tank. And our tank is a character that, and it was one of those moments where it's like, this reminds me of MMO fights where it's like, we have been doing this battle for 10 minutes. We slowly devolved at the end. Everyone's dead. And we've just been like, but the boss is so low. Just kill it. Just kill it. Just kill it.
I mean, I have won and lost fights as a tank like that in MMOs.
Yeah. Where it is a battle of attrition to see if you or the boss dies first.
Yes.
And then sometimes you're playing an FF14 Paladin and it's not a battle of attrition anymore. Or Warrior. Tanks in that game are real strong.
But yes, it turns out our tank had a damage spell that deals scaling damage to armor. So we were able to get through. And yeah.
This was a ridiculous situation, yes.
It was a ridiculous situation.
So is the game intentionally designed like an MMO?
No.
Not really?
Like, it's very much a tactics, like, role-playing game.
Okay.
There's just a character who happens to start with some more HP, and we definitely built this character to be a tank.
And after decades of playing MMOs, we just relate everything to MMO mechanics.
Yeah, I mean,
aggro isn't a thing. We have two characters who can seriously take a hit in that game. One of them has a lot of armor, and the other one has a bunch of dodge rolls.
So super evasion tank.
Yes. Yeah. Very evasive tank. And I get, that's the tank I'm running. I have, 4 free dodges. Normally, dodging takes resources, but I have items that give me, once per turn, get a free dodge. But yeah, it was really fun, and it just reminded me of, those moments in gaming when it's like, well, we've kind of lost all hope, but maybe we'll win anyways. And we did, and it was really a wonderful payoff.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of at the time, the group that Thalen and I were in's first Centrigosa kill, where he got the final shot off as he was dying, and we were all icicles and had to come back with the rest. But the boss was dead. That's what really mattered the most.
I was going to say, for me, it will always be our first Nefarian kill. Things started kind of going off the rails, and we managed to just, squeak it out at the end.
With the call over comms of use the F and force.
Yeah. And stay on target. Good times. But yes, Middara is still proving to be extremely fun and creating good moments, so I'm enjoying that.
That's super cool. I'm glad that it's available now.
I am so glad it's available now. It's a very fun game, and I look forward to more people getting to try it.
Production problems have been a thing universally.
It's not so much that. It's like they released Act 1 of a 3-act game, and so they did not work more on releasing more Act 1 until they had Act 2 and 3 ready.
I guess that makes sense.
So only been a Kickstarter game, except for brief releases at conventions. It's been pay attention to their newsletter to see when they're offering copies that didn't get picked up on Kickstarter or extra Kickstarter copies they're finally shipping out.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like one of those games that's like super cool, and you really want everybody playing it to be kind of on the same page.
Yeah,
so I picked up a copy, and we'll have to see if I can't put together a group of people to play it to go through the whole like learning process. Which also, like, one of my only complaints with Gloomhaven, coming late into Gloomhaven is not dissimilar from coming late into a Diablo season.
I mean, isn't that probably just going to be universally the problem of living games like that?
It can be, but it's also possible to design them such that, like, there's a good entry point.
One thing I know Middara does is that you start with 4 characters, and there are more than 4 playable characters. But I'm not sure if they intended that to be an entry point or not. We don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. But it would still be really weird.
Yeah. There isn't like a natural onboarding point.
There is a like non-campaign mode that we were originally going to try, and then it was like start off with this many resources and build 4 characters, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of initial onboarding, and we're like, okay, let's watch some YouTube videos to try and understand this. And then the YouTube video is like, yeah, and when you're starting out your campaign mode, here are the pre-built characters with all of the gear that you want to use. And then it will take you through a tutorial where it will teach you how all of the gear that we give you works, and then you can make decisions later. It's like, oh, so the campaign mode is actually the perfect onboarding mechanism. Okay, we'll use that.
So really, the non-campaign mode is New Game Plus.
The non-campaign mode is New Game Plus. I would also be curious to see how they try and keep things fresh, because like it seems like you would have a serious limit on the number of interesting adventures you could do, like with a like 5-page book detailing how to create a new adventure versus like, you know, the 200-page campaign guide full of new adventures.
To be fair, that book is like 2/3 story.
It is true. So I would also say if you don't necessarily like reading that much, there is a Storyteller app. This apparently also exists for
the app is called
Gloomhaven.
Foreteller, and it's also available for Gloomhaven.
Yeah, where you can get like professionally voice acted narration of all of the stuff.
That's fancy.
Yeah, the bespoke gaming products industry has really boomed.
Yeah, Middara Act 1 is free on Foreteller. 2 and 3 are not free. They're also not out yet. Gloomhaven is also not free.
So this next topic is gonna be a bit weird, and I'll warn our listeners of that ahead of time. Redfall is a game that many of us were looking forward to, but none of us have actually played yet. And
I've been playing it during the show.
Oh, you've been playing it during the show. Okay. You can give actual thoughts other than, you know, what I have seen from live streams. Basically, this, I guess the last 2 weeks, Redfall has not been received very well by the community.
And like, Redfall is a game by Arcane.
Right.
There are exactly 2 studios where straight up I will buy whatever game they make sight unseen. And Arcane is one of them.
I have a more spotty relationship with Arcane. I love the Dishonored series and all the games that were set in that universe. I appreciate what Prey was doing, but also got to a point where I decided I didn't really want to continue that game. I wasn't necessarily enjoying the game. And then I loved the setting of God, I'm drawing a blank on the
Deathloop.
Deathloop, yep. But also like just the mechanical aspect of that game didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But like they were all amazingly crafted games.
Yeah, and that's sort of the thing is like whether or not you like what they're doing, the games are exquisitely made. Like Dishonored being the biggest one of those, like the entire Dishonored series through all of its DLC is just impeccable.
Like Dishonored did one of the best jobs I have seen of a game head hopping between characters, yet still feeling like a cohesive experience. You know, because like if you play in a specific way between the 3 games, you're playing 3 different characters, and at a minimum, you're playing 2 different characters. But like the experience of playing those characters, while unique, felt cohesive. And I think like one of the things that stood out to me about the narrative surrounding Redfall is like mostly that game was sold to me through a series of fully animated videos about a group of characters that I'm supposed to care about. And as I understand, there's no real cutscenes or story driven elements other than some, you know, narration. So that seemed weird. That was not the type of experience I was expecting from all of the material leading up to it.
So like for me it's Arcane does Left 4 Dead.
Right.
And that's like Arcane does Left 4 Dead, except more you're fighting vampires rather than you're fighting zombies, which honestly, more interesting enemy type to begin with for me anyway. So I'm fairly on board, but also, hey, it's co-op. But like, you know, I'm 20 minutes into it and like it's got a story. It's got a bunch of personality. You know, it's one of those like I'm playing this and in the first, you know, hour, the first chunk, I am not seeing what people dislike about this game. You know, this is it's a game that's definitely crafted around a multiplayer sensibility in a way that Arcane games haven't been previously. It's definitely not like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not as polished as Dishonored. It's just where they're spending their time polishing is different.
Yeah, most of the takes that I've seen is that the combat itself and the AI are not terribly polished.
Yeah, I mean, I bumped the difficulty up. I didn't really see much there, and I think that part of it is Dishonored comes from like Arcane games come from a stealth game background, and so like one of the criticisms that people leveled against Deathloop was that the run and gun wasn't very good, and I'm kind of like, yeah. It's like saying the run and gun in BioShock wasn't very good. Like that's not really what the game is doing.
But if it looks like that's what the game is trying to do, then that's absolutely a valid criticism.
It's true. It's just that that's part of like, I think if anything, it didn't do a great job of selling what it's doing in much the same way that like Deathloop also sort of didn't.
So what do you think this game is doing that like would be the better way to play it rather than, because like when I think of, I mean honestly, when I think of Left 4 Dead, I remember coming at it very late and not necessarily understanding what the appeal was. But it was a horde shooter with a bunch of kind of weightless attacks.
Yeah, and it has a real Borderlands feel to me. Like Borderlands also had a lot of weightless feeling attacks, but that's not what it's there for. Like I don't think Borderlands run and gun gameplay is all that great mostly, with a couple of standout exceptions for certain guns. But like mostly it's kind of okay. It's just the experience of playing with a bunch of people is really cool. And a lot of the stuff that would be complex is limited. Like you're scaling it back because you're dealing with the logistical overhead of playing with X number of other people. I will say that in the first, you know, like since I've been playing it during the podcast, there hasn't been a single enemy that has successfully dealt damage to me on like the medium difficulty setting, which seems Like that's a little. I expect that in a tutorial, but also like that's a little anemic.
And the other thing about Borderlands is Borderlands, the first two games anyway, have excellent writing.
Yes. Yeah, I mean Borderlands is and Borderlands writing is very carefully designed to be something that you experience with your friends. This honestly didn't feel that different from like again, it's the first like half hour of the game, so I can't call it, completely representative, but like they have characters with personality and there's enough dialogue lines going on that I'm getting a story. I'm getting a sense of a character, I'm getting a sense of a story. I understand what's going on, or at least I understand enough of what's going on to be like, huh, they're saying something here. There's a story happening here.
So are you thinking it's just like maybe the mechanical elements of it that might be driving people off?
I don't know. I mean, thus far, it's like it's a competent, reasonably stylish, clearly made for multiplayer shooter. I mean, I've unlocked like the first safe house.
I guess my other question is here: does it feel like an Arcane game?
Like, there's an interesting question. I don't know, because I had a very, very from between Prey and Dishonored, I had a really clear idea of what an Arcane game looked like, and then Deathloop happened, and Deathloop is an unbelievably different take. While still, it's like they used all of their strengths to make something radically different from anything they'd made before.
Deathloop is still showing off a lot of their strengths, though, in things like movement and area design and things like that.
Yeah, and my initial take is that I need to explore more of the game. I don't hate any of the level design thus far. But again, I've only seen a tutorial area. Movement feels good. Like even I don't have movement abilities yet. I'm just moving from point A to point B. Feels good. Like it's a decent but not overwhelming speed. I can sprint for very good speed. It feels responsive. Guns feel fine. It's a pistol, and I've had a pistol and a shotgun. I'm not like they feel like a pistol and a shotgun. And I don't know, maybe it's like, hey, it opens up and we discover that it opens up and I discover that so much of what Arcane is really good at, which is really, really beautifully crafted level design, falls apart when it's in a big open world multiplayer space. But like one of the criticisms I've heard is that the world feels really open and empty, except when it's like you've got points of interest and then everywhere in between that is just not that interesting. And like
that's a common open world problem. Not to excuse it here, but it is a common open world problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem in Borderlands too. It's a problem in hell, in some cases, a problem in Left 4 Dead.
I mean, it's a problem in Jedi Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they give you mounts to skip those areas.
Yeah, like there's a problem in FF15. They have a whole car just so you can deal with that.
And a lot of those games are great so long as you're staying on the golden path, but like when you get off the golden path, there's just not much there.
Yeah, but and kind of where I'm landing is like nothing I have seen here. If I loaded up this game with zero context, I'd be like, "Oh, this is cool. I'm interested in playing more of this."
The primary two complaints I've heard are that it's generic and it's buggy.
Yeah, and a lot of what I've seen,
and I think it's hitting a lot of extra reviewer disappointment because of the generic part.
Yeah,
because Deathloop was a lot of things. Generic is not one of them.
This is true.
A lot of what I've seen is like people playing with the jank of encounters and like, having to shoot things before the mobs even wake up and realize you're there. Or, I don't know, just generic bad open world pathing design where like if you step in front of like a box or something, it resets the pathing.
Yeah, I think part of it might be that it does play very similar to Left 4 Dead, but like I don't know that Left 4 Dead is a formula that is still successful.
I mean, to some extent it is, because like Darktide's still around.
Darktide is notably less open than Left 4 Dead. It's more of a corridor horde shooter.
I suppose I should probably install this since I have Game Pass.
It's one of those things where it's like, if you have Game Pass, honestly, like, it's probably worth loading up just to give it a shot. It's like, doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, the only reason why I didn't install it this week is I have found myself caught in the trap of building a fourth character in Path of Exile.
I have so
Once
many
you get
new
the hang of it.
games.
The thing, and I don't know, to sort of close out my thought on Redfall, like, maybe the game is generic, maybe it has a couple of bugs. Like, the release of this game is not the crime that the internet would have you believe.
I mean, it never is.
And it never is, certainly, but like, this is a game where I have seen other game devs gleefully denigrating the game, and I'm like, what the hell, guys?
like,
Expectations were too high. That might be a problem on this one.
I wonder how much of this is the sequence of events that led up to the release of the game and the review copies being handed out and pissing off reviewers. Because, like, from what I understand, the review copies of the game went out on the Saturday before the embargo lifted on Monday. So, like, people had Saturday midday to Sunday to Monday evening to do all the review work. So I don't know how much of the bad reviewing is just people disgruntled because of the way that rolled out.
I mean, because of the way that rolled out, there are a lot of people who did like review in progress when the embargo lifted.
Right, yeah. But like, I've also been on this end of a bad review sequence. Like, I felt Mass Effect Andromeda was a perfectly fine game and enjoyed it greatly. And it was reviewed into hell.
Expectations.
And like, I don't know, maybe all the problems were cleared up in day one patching. Like, that's what happened with Andromeda, is like there was a sequence of patches you downloaded
That took like 2 weeks for Andromeda.
I mean, like, I didn't have any of the problems that a lot of the early reviews talked about. The weird facial animations, and
I did have those.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm more forgiving for a variety of different games. Because I definitely had that in Andromeda and was like, yeah, I mean, that was dumb, but is it game ruining?
And it could just be that, like, you got a lot of shit on your plate and this game doesn't have to be your everything right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's also entirely fair. Like, I don't know, maybe it's not healthy to put your expectations for happiness onto a piece of media.
There are so many games coming out lately, though. It definitely, like, that fact is what's kind of pushing me away from this, is like, I have so many games to play. Like Pizza Tower. I should play Pizza Tower.
You should play Pizza Tower.
That game looks hilarious.
Yeah, and I'm playing Jedi Survivor, and that's about it.
I mean, I'm only playing Path of Exile at the moment, so.
But Belghast Epoch has a new patch coming soon.
I know.
I wonder if I gotta find out if Last Epoch fixed its weird Steam Deck problems. I mean, beyond their current response, which is to be like, no, we don't actually support the Steam Deck, even though they do. I mean, it works on the Steam Deck or works on the Steam Deck.
That's the safe answer.
It is absolutely the safe answer.
Something lowered expectations.
I didn't realize Labyrinth Trials and maps are quite as long as they are.
Yeah, no, they're real annoying. There's a reason why I don't ever do them.
I think I'm going to stop doing them.
I get more than enough goddess thingies in Delve to supply all of us forever. Don't worry about doing Labyrinth Trials.
I mean, at this point, I have a lot of spares, so even if I die multiple times, which may happen.
I think I have like 60 or so in the bank.
I only have like 5. Anyway.
Yeah.
This talk of Redfall makes me want to update Darktide and give it another go now that they've had a few months of patches.
Need to be in the right headspace for that game.
That game did commit an unforgivable sin for a match-based multiplayer game.
Of
Not
not
having
letting
private
you...
matches.
Of failing at the finale and not giving you any credit.
Yeah.
Like that's a cardinal sin.
Oh, like if you die at the finale, some people can get credit and some people won't.
No, like you and I played a whole match and we won, and then the game went weird and we didn't get any credit for having done so.
Oh, right. Right.
And we both turned it off and haven't come back.
It is very it's like, oh, I don't want to do that thing that I spent 20 minutes on again. Yep, nope. Cool. Peace out.
But it's definitely had some significant patches. I suspect Redfall will as well. Like,
I'm sure.
I mean, even the most like famously disastrous launch I can think of in the last several years has patched itself to the point where it's quite excellent.
Eh,
I know you're talking about No Man's Sky, but I'm sure Bella's
No.
thinking about some other game.
I'm thinking of Anthem.
I was gonna say I was thinking of Anthem, and I was like, I don't know about that.
I don't
Wow,
know that it ever got to a good state.
Wow, I sure wasn't thinking about either of those games.
Really?
Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk was great at launch.
No, it was not. I'm sorry. You were lucky at launch, to be fair.
I was lucky that I had adequate hardware at launch.
I mean, No Man's Sky also up there.
I mean,
In
Cyberpunk
fairness.
and No Man's Sky followed a similar trajectory because, like, there's been a lot of patches to Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's one of the advantages of, for all the people complain that games nowadays have a, every game has a day one patch. Why don't they release games that are actually functional? Blah, 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 blah.
To be clear, it would be nice.
Like, there are a lot of games that get that can actually get the support they need to become great.
Yes. Still, situations like the PC launch of Jedi Survivor, is that still a thing that should be happening?
My biggest problem with that launch has been the statements that were released about it, in that they were blaming it on the fact that people have high-end computers but are still running Windows 10.
Oh no. Oh honey, no.
Yeah, no. And as a result, there have been several videos proving that, like, no, it performs just as crap underneath Windows 10.
Yeah.
So
under
Windows 11
11.
didn't do anything to DirectX or
No.
like
No,
That's
not
not a thing.
significantly.
So there's Jedi Survivor shouldn't happen because that's a major publisher.
right. That's kind of what I mean here.
There are definitely games, and like one of the reasons why I hesitate to be like, oh yeah, that should never happen, is because like I know game devs who still cannot get a hold of 30 series graphics cards for development.
Sure. That's entirely understandable. They're not EA.
That's true. They're not EA. Like,
They're not Bethesda. They're not Microsoft.
yeah, I mean, I think that it is unfortunately horrifically clear how small a portion of the PC market video games are. And you can see where people are cutting corners, and it sure isn't a good look. Because yeah, like,
Well, I mean, Last of Us. I attempted to play that on PC. It was unplayable. I don't know if it's been fixed since then, but like, it was crashing left and right. Basically, anytime I looked at like a fire effect or something like that, the game would just crater and die.
I'm so torn. I don't know. I'm so torn on this one because porting to PC sucks ass.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's just miserable.
Uh-huh. Yep. Sure is.
And like, I'm like halfway to maybe you shouldn't. But also that means that games just don't come out at all on, like, a bunch of games don't come out on PC at all.
Which has been the situation for a number of years now.
Yeah, well, and I ask, is it better to get the game at all, or is it better to not have a buggy release because porting to PC sucks?
I mean, if I know it's not coming out on PC, I can buy it where it's actually been tested.
Or just write the game off.
Or that.
I guess my frustration with that release specifically is there have been a lot of Sony games that have come to PC that were perfectly fine. So I don't know why this one was so phenomenally bad.
Yeah, that's one that I'm like, why is this a problem? Like, why are they having this problem with it? There are other PC ports.
And I think, like, to some extent, a lot of these issues may just come down to they cut it too close and didn't have time to optimize before launch. Because I'm sure probably if I were to reinstall Last of Us, it's probably been patched and it's fine. But, like, that's the challenge is, you know, the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
I don't know. Video games sure are trying to figure out new and innovative ways to make multiple first impressions. In some cases, they're kind of succeeding. Like, you can now have an early access game that gets something of a first impression when it goes to full release.
Yeah, if you take money for a product, you launched your game.
Like, I get
Like,
that.
I still consider, like, EA early access games, you know, that I paid for as launched games.
So I understand that statement, but I also games actually do get launch day bumps, even if they've been in early access for a while.
Oh yeah.
Well, and they definitely do as well when they, you know, switch platforms. So, like, if EA was on, or early access was on the Epic Game Store, you know, there's a sizable bump when it becomes a Steam game.
Yep. And you also get, like, new first impressions whenever you release, like, major patches. Maybe the answer is you get a first patch every time somebody's willing to commit enough PR dollars to it.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a 10-year-old game and launch it on Steam, and it's a big event.
Yeah, the only problem with that is the fallacy that people assume the Steam concurrency numbers actually represent the total population.
Yeah, well...
Listen, there's also an old saying that there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics.
I think... I don't know if this is still true, but for a very long time, the only game anywhere where I legitimately trusted the numbers for how many people were online or had played, mostly just how many people were online concurrent at any given time, was EverQuest. Because somebody back in the day thought that putting the number of logged in players next to every server at EverQuest was a good idea.
I thought it was a brilliant idea. I mean, it was a great idea until their numbers started to fall. But, like, even when Dark Age of Camelot launched, it did the same thing. But also, like, the scale of things was just different. Because, like, you know, I considered being on a server with 1,500 people to be, like, a plenty large server.
Oh,
and
man,
then
that server's probably choking and dying. There's too many people on it.
Most of my complaints about New World has been over the fact that they only allow 2,000 people on a server. And it's
they're just trying to kick it as old school as possible.
I guess, yeah. It's funny how that feels so different than it did back then.
Once upon a time, I was so down on Destiny for just feeling as tiny and small as it did. Because it's like, oh, there might be 5 other people in a map. That doesn't feel like a big online game to me. And now I'm like, there are so few games where I care if there are more than maybe 20 other people around. And that's a stretch.
I mean, like, I had this realization the other day that a lot of the reason why I have leaned so heavily into ARPGs is I was mostly playing MMOs solo. You can play an ARPG successfully solo way easier.
I mean, counterpoint, like, this is the reason why I consistently come back to play Guild Wars.
It's true.
Yes.
Yeah, the world does feel alive.
There are a few places where having a bajillion people in one place is actually, like, cool and fun versus oh god, really?
I mean, for me, the biggest strength that Guild Wars 2 has is just how easy it is to get in and out of group content without actually being in a group.
And how to get the proper epic feeling of a big group battle.
Yep.
It's so good.
Yeah, the metas feel like I'm doing something bigger and more important than I am.
I mean, you're still somebody is doing the absolute Lord's work of coordinating a massive group of people who may have never raided together to try and teach them like some basic raid mechanics, or maybe not so basic raid mechanics in some cases. Looking at you, Sunwan.
But like, even the Suwon fight is easier today than when I first did it. And I don't know.
Is it easier because it's been nerfed, or because we've like established a proper method?
I think I mean it's easier because the majority of the community now has an understanding of the fight, so that it just kind of happens like Tequaddle always just sort of happens.
I have to say, like, this is nothing but the most outrageous praise I've ever heard. Somehow we have a game where people, like, the majority of people going have learned how to do raids.
And it's just through repetition. Like, I mean,
like it's just you've got a bunch of people together doing raid tier complexity stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, Suwon was like a big hurdle for a long time, but I mean, it has aged enough to where enough people understand it that someone like that's the strength of that content. Is it gets to the point where the majority of the community is schooled in the mechanics to where a random noob can wander upon it and just follow other people.
Yup. Great. Perfect.
Like, it's amazing that it works, but it does. I can't count the number of fights that I learned just by following where the majority of the mob is going.
I still remember the dude in World versus World whose entire vocabulary was wait and go 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 go. That was it. But he was unbelievably successful.
Yeah. There's a Brazilian guy on our server that speaks little to no English, but he says one or two phrases like that and successfully organizes keep raids all the time.
I legitimately don't even know who to credit with that kind of thing. Like,
just being like, and then you get people to follow, like, success begets success. You get people to follow their lead, and like, man, this is the game where it's like, just get 80 people following one person's direction, and whew, crazy stuff can happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, it gets ingrained into your system very early on. Look for a tag, follow the tag. And like, the tag doesn't even need to be saying anything. Just the existence of the tag on a map will cause people to coalesce on top of them. Like, I've done that so many times since I bought my tag that someone says they need something done, and I tag up, and magically a group appears.
I do love when I'm in a zone and like we're all following a tag around and we're doing stuff, and then it's like, oh, I forgot to untag.
Yes.
I've
seen that.
I wasn't planning on doing content, but we could hit something if you want.
I guess we are now. Yeah, like the lack of friction for that kind of big group content is what makes that game feel alive, I think. So I did want to say one thing as kind of issuing a warning to our listeners who maybe aren't going to theaters rapidly. If you go to see the Guardians of the Galaxy film and you are a pet lover, just brace yourself.
Oh.
There's a lot of really rough scenes.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So yeah, like it was really good. Like the film was great. But also there was some very difficult things to sit through as someone who loves cute fuzzy animals.
Duly noted.
Any other topics?
Ludonarracon is happening on Steam right now, and there's some fun looking stuff, like fun trailers. I'd recommend checking it out. I definitely have wishlisted a few games. There's a game that is being described as Night in the Woods by way of Scrubs, and it's like perfectly tuned to what I want to play. It sounds incredibly sad and funny.
EVE Online is celebrating its 20th anniversary.
Man, did Eve come out before WoW? Just doing that math. Because was WoW 2003 or
2004. Wow, it was 2004.
2004.
So it's November 2004, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Eve
Yeah, no,
predates WoW by like 18 months.
I absolutely remember playing the tests of Eve while I was playing Dark Age of Camelot, I think.
Games that released in 2003, other than EVE Online, include Star Wars Galaxies, the first expansion of Final Fantasy XI.
I was going to say, Final Fantasy released before that, didn't it? Although I do not know if it released in the States before that.
Yeah, Lineage 2.
Yep, I remember testing that for the longest time.
Maple Story, Shadowbane.
Shadowbane was not a good game.
Aw, you hurt me, Bell.
I know.
You're not wrong, but you hurt me. Second Life.
Oh, man. I know so many computer science professors who are into Second Life.
I mean, Second Life is still very much a thing.
Second Life, it's the metaverse, baby.
Its popularity has been mostly taken over by VR chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is still around.
And my favorite MMO to read about, other than A Tale in the Desert.
That is such a wild game.
Yeah, it is.
I have played it, and I appreciate all the people that are really into it, but it is not my thing.
And we're definitely past the golden age of MMOs.
You know, the part of that I
We were
find
not,
so
because every game is
fascinating.
an MMO.
What?
Maybe we're not, because every game is an MMO.
Yeah, we're into the era of live services.
Belle, do you remember early 2004, right before people started getting into WoW beta, and everybody was like, "Yeah, I think MMOs have probably peaked."
I remember some of that, but I was also still heavily engaged. I was playing the hell out of City of Heroes.
Yeah. Well, I remember people being like, "Yeah, I think all the best MMOs to ever happen have already been released. We've got City of Heroes, we've got EVE Online, we've got Star Wars Galaxies, we've got Final Fantasy. There's nothing more you could want."
Well, I absolutely remember when City of Heroes came out. I'm like, wow, this is really the best the genre is going to get for a while. And then my friends started getting into WoW beta.
When did Ragnarok come out?
I don't know.
That was my first MMO.
But was it really your first MMO, or did you play on a knockoff emulated server of Ragnarok? Because most of the people
play on the real servers.
Really, that's most everyone that I know who has memories of Ragnarok remembers emulated servers.
I mean, maybe I was playing on an emulated server, but that still means it was my first MMO.
Yeah.
I actually do not know.
So you're still doing better than me.
I still count Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast as my first MMO. And then sometime after that, I got into EverQuest. I was a couple years late getting into EverQuest. I was not a day one person there for certain. I started around the launch of Velius, but I wouldn't know most of you were it not for Horizon. That's a weird thing to say, but it's absolutely true.
Horizon?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Empires of Historia.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I say that is the game that I met Shiana through. Shiana was super into playing a dragon.
I wanted to play that game. I just did not have the means to at the time.
Yeah, that was a thing at that era. I didn't have a credit card.
Yeah.
The
that game,
never stop pretending you're a dragon.
That game was wildly unfinished.
That's what I hear.
There were 80 levels in the game. There did not exist a single monster in the game above level 38, level 40, something like that. So the people who hit 80 would grind the highest level mobs, and there was a single zone and like 3 or 4 packs of them. But like the group didn't have like an upper bound on party size or something weird like that. So like there would just be these giant grind parties where everyone is getting experience from the same mobs.
Or something like that, WoW didn't put in upper limits to party size till like.
Yeah, no, like I remember doing dungeon quests by everyone dropping the party just as the mob was about to die and then joining back the raid. And that was like one of the first add-ons I installed is someone had figured out a way to automate that process where when it got low, it would drop you from the party, but then it would ping the person to get an invite after the kill before the next encounter. And you could do a 40-person raid in a dungeon. The first time I cleared any of that content, I think, was at least in a 20-person group.
That was usually that's usually what it was.
I mean, I think they had to tune down the content before it could really be doable with a single group.
Actually, I think Strathholm and Skolomance were 10 people.
I thought that was after they had updated.
Yeah, after they.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I absolutely remember doing those with 10 people. Because I regularly got tagged to drag people through it when they needed a quest. Same with Lure Blackrock Spire and Blackrock Depths.
Yep.
I was the token person in guild who knew my way through Blackrock Depths.
Oh, Black Fathom's Deep? No. Sunken Temple. I was the token person who knew their way through Sunken Temple.
Yep.
We've gone a little long tonight, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, we have. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Support your writers. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. And